a resultant of forces. He resisted all restraint, especially national restraint, believing that his one weapon, money, would be more effective in obtaining what he wanted in state legislatures than in Congress. Thus of necessity he precipitates a conflict instead of establishing an adjustment. He is therefore in essence a revolutionist without being aware of it. The same specialized thinking appears in his reasoning touching actual government. New York City will serve as an illustration. New York has for 2 generations been noted for a civic corruption which has been theoretically abominable to all good citizens, and which the capitalistic class has denounced as abominable to itself. I suspect this to be an imaginative conception of the situation. Tammany Hall is, I take it, the administrative bureau through which capital purchases its privileges. An incorruptible government would offend capital because, under such a government, capital would have to obey the law, and a privilege would cease. Occasionally, Tammany grows rapacious and exacts too much for its services. Then a reform movement is undertaken, and finally a new management is imposed on Tammany. But when Tammany has consented to a satisfactory sale of prices, the reform ends. To change the system would imply a shift in the seat of power. In fine, money is the weapon of the capitalist as the sword was the weapon of the medieval soldier. Only as the capitalist is more highly specialized than the soldier ever was, he is more helpless when his single weapon fails him. From the days of William the Conqueror to our own, the great soldier has been, very commonly, a famous statesman also, but I do not now remember, in English or American history, a single capitalist who has earned eminence for comprehensive statesmanship. On the contrary, although many have participated in public affairs, have held high office, and have shown ability therein, capitalists have not unusually, however unjustly, been suspected of having ulterior objects in view, unconnected with the public welfare, such as tariffs or land grants. Certainly, so far as I am aware, no capitalist has ever acquired such influence over his contemporaries as has been attained with apparent ease by men like Cromwell, Washington, or even Jackson. And this leads advancing in an orderly manner, step by step, to what is perhaps to me the most curious and interesting of all modern intellectual phenomena connected with the specialized mind, the attitude of the capitalist toward the law. Naturally, the capitalist of all men might be supposed to be he who would respect and uphold the law most, considering that he is at once the wealthiest and most vulnerable of human beings when called upon to defend himself by physical force. How defenseless and how incompetent he is in such exigencies, he proved to the world some years ago when he plunged himself and the country into the great Pennsylvania coal strike, with absolutely no preparation. Nevertheless, in spite of his vulnerability, he is of all citizens the most lawless. He appears to assume that the law will always be enforced, and when he has need of it, by some special personnel whose duty lies that way, while he may evade the law when convenient or bring it into contempt with impunity. The capitalist seems incapable of feeling his responsibility, as a member of the governing class, in this respect, and that he is bound to uphold the law, no matter what the law may be, in order that others may do the like. If the capitalist has bought some sovereign function and wishes to abuse it for his own behoof, he regards the law which restrains him as a despotic invasion of his constitutional rights, because, with his specialized mind, he cannot grasp the relation of a sovereign function to the nation as a whole. He therefore looks upon the evasion of a law devised for public protection, but inimical to him, as innocent or even meritorious. If an election to be lost, and the legislature, which has been chosen by the majority, cannot be pacified by money, but passes some act which promises to be annoying, the first instinct of the capitalist is to retain counsel, not to advise him touching his duty under the law, but to advise a method by which he may elude it, or if he cannot elude it, by which he may have it annulled as unconstitutional by the courts. The lawyer who succeeds in this branch of practice is certain to win the highest prizes at the bar. And as capital has had now, for more than 1 or even 2 generations, all the prizes of the law within its gift, this attitude of capital has had a profound effect upon shaping the American legal mind. The capitalist, as I infer, regards the constitutional form of government which exists in the United States as a convenient method of obtaining his own way against a majority, but the lawyer has learned to worship it as a fetish. Nor is this astonishing, for, were written constitutions suppressed, he would lose most of his importance and much of his income. Quite honestly, therefore, the American lawyer has come to believe that a sheet of paper soiled with printer's ink and interpreted by half a dozen elderly gentlemen snugly dozing in armchairs has some inherent and marvellous virtue by which it can arrest the march of omnipotent nature. And capital gladly accepts this view of American civilization, since hitherto capitalists have usually been able to select the magistrates who decide their causes, perhaps directly through the intervention of some president or governor whom they have had nominated by a convention controlled by their money, or else, if the judiciary has been elective, they have caused sympathetic judges to be chosen by means of a mechanism like Tammany, which they have frankly bought. I wish to make myself clearly understood. Neither capitalists nor lawyers are necessarily, or even probably, other than conscientious men. What they do is to think with specialized minds. All dominant types have been more or less specialized, if not so much as this, and this specialization has caused, as I understand it, that obtuseness of perception which has been their ruin when the environment who favored them has changed. All that is remarkable about the modern capitalist is the excess of his eccentricity, or his deviation from that resultant of forces to which he must conform. To us, however, at present, neither the morality nor the present mental eccentricity of the capitalist is so material as the possibility of his acquiring flexibility under pressure, for it would seem to be almost mathematically demonstrable that he will, in the near future, be subjected to a pressure under which he must develop flexibility, or be eliminated. There can be no doubt that the modern environment is changing faster than any environment ever previously changed. Therefore, the social center of gravity constantly tends to shift more rapidly, and therefore modern civilization has unprecedented need of the administrative or generalizing mind. But as the mass and momentum of modern society is prodigious, it will require a correspondingly prodigious energy to carry it safely from an unstable to a stable equilibrium. The essential is to generate the energy which brings success, and the more the mind dwells upon the peculiarities of the modern capitalistic class, the more doubts obtrude themselves touching their ability to make the effort even at present, and still more so to make it in the future as the magnitude of the social organism grows. One source of capitalistic weakness comes from a lack of proper instruments wherewith to work, even supposing the will of capital to be good. And this lack of administrative ability is somewhat due to the capitalistic attitude toward education. In the United States, capital has long owned the leading universities by right of purchase, as it has owned the highways, the currency, and the press, and capital has used the universities in a general way to develop capitalistic ideas. This, however, is of no great moment. What is of moment is that capital has commercialized education. Apparently, modern society, if it is to cohere, must have a high order of generalizing mind, a mind which can grasp a multitude of complex relations. But this is a mind which can, at best, only be produced in small quantity and at high cost. Capital has preferred the specialized mind, and that not of the highest quality, since it has found it profitable to set quantity before quality to the limit which the market will endure. Capitalists have never insisted upon raising an educational standard, save in science and mechanics, and the relative overstimulation of the scientific mind has now become an actual menace to order, because of the inferiority of the administrative intelligence. Yet, even supposing the synthetic mind of the highest power to be increasing in proportion to the population instead of, as I suspect, pretty rapidly decreasing, and supposing the capitalist to be fully alive to the need of administrative improvements, a phalanx of Washingtons would be impotent to raise the administrative level of the United States materially, as long as the courts remain censors of legislation, because the province of the censorial court is to dislocate any comprehensive body of legislation, whose effect would be to change the social status. That was the fundamental purpose which underlay the adoption of a written constitution whose object was to keep local sovereignties intact, especially at the South. Jefferson insisted